I'm really excited about today's guest. I am one who suffers from sleep apnea, and we're going to learn all about sleep apnea. And I discovered that there's over 18 million men and about 7 million women here in the United States that suffer similar issues. And, I've been doing the CPAP machine, I've done all kinds of weird remedies, but nothing's really helped. And so I been looking for somebody to speak on it. And of course, here at Destiny, we're all about holistic treatment because, we're constantly dealing with the corporate medical model of allopathy. And my guest today is Dr. Dylan Petkiss, and I found Dylan on, would you believe, the internet
Very
and
reliable source, yes.
TikTok. And, he is, trained as a doctor. And so he's dealing with this from a very interesting perspective. And we're going to learn all about it. His book is called Sleep Apnea Solution Less, I think it's called Less Snoring, Less CPAP, Just Sleep, which is a fantastic title. And so we're going to get the whole rundown today from Dylan. So hey Dylan, welcome to Destiny. Great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Obviously, you wrote the book because you are also a sleep apnea victim. Talk a little bit about your journey from start to finish in terms of wanting to find a solution.
Gotcha. From the start, like when my parents met, or
Yeah. I mean,
how much time we got?
yeah.
So back, looking at the date, 13 or 14 years. It's been a while. All right. I was starting to have, I was starting to drag, and I was like in my mid 20s at that time. So starting to drag, just like tired, etc. I was like, well, maybe just stressed, maybe just whatever. I just kept pushing through like a lot of people do. And I know I'll kind of shove men under the bus here that sometimes we kind of wait on things or we just kind of keep going. So I was doing that. And then I just got to a point where it's just like, geez, I was maybe waking up every 60, 90 minutes, heart beating a little fast, always exhausted in the morning, like two, three, 4 cups of coffee. Eventually graduated to caffeine pills because I figured that'd be more efficient. God forbid I actually do something about the problem, just, take 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, which I don't recommend anyone do. In case anyone only listened to the first 2 minutes. And then I went to the doctor, like the primary care. They're just like, oh, I don't know, see the sleep specialist. Sleep specialist, you might have sleep apnea. Do the sleep study, get the all the schmutz over your head and all over the place, and they kind of wrap you like a mummy you see on the History Channel, and then the nurse or the tech kind of just says, sleep normal. And then I imagine they laugh in their own head when they leave you in the room. And then came back with moderate sleep apnea. And then the next time I was in the doctor's office because for some reason you need to wait 8 weeks for a physician to tell you you have 25.7 on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I don't get it either. But oh, yeah, you can do a CPAP. And I was like, okay, maybe. And then tried that out a couple times, and I was definitely in the camp of like, screw this. This doesn't seem very attractive or effective. And they're kind of like, well, just stick with it. I'm like, but this feels like this is making things worse. And I just, went on my own journey. Like, well, like took a step back. Like, okay, like why is this happening? Because the classic phenotype, right, of sleep apnea is not like mid 20 something that is in okay shape, etc. It's usually like, man, somewhere between 50 and 70, maybe a little bit overweight. That was not me. So I had to kind of understand like, okay, why is this going on? And that led me to really discover, hey, this is a lot more around the breathing part than it is around just like a obstruction, which is that should feel less profound than it is because I'm basically saying a sleep breathing disorder. We should
Hmm.
probably talk about breathing. Yeah. And that's when I start to learn like what is the main issue with our breathing at night? Because when we think about sleep apnea, everyone's mind is like, oh hey, like I stopped breathing or I'm snoring. But we never really understand what's going on. Our understanding is typically just led by a doctor who they mean well, just to like, yeah, you just airway gets blocked off at night.
Right.
Sun goes up, sun goes down. Can't do anything about that. Like it just comes to a point where we need to understand why that's happening. And when I looked back in the research, like some of the old research from, well, okay, I just said old, and I'm going to say 1950s. So whoever's offended, don't be too offended. But that was like some of the original research on it. And what they found was when test participants, like if you made them breathe faster at night, it would cause their airway to be obstructed, right? So
Yeah.
this is counterintuitive to what we are told, in which is airways gets blocked off, tongue flops back, etc. And then that's all you can do. It's a breathing event that then triggers a collapse in the tissue, which just on face value does make sense. You know, patients with sleep apnea, they may stop breathing at night anywhere from 5 to 40 times per hour.
Right.
That does not, in the grand majority of people, that does not happen during the daytime at all.
Let me stop you real quickly, Dylan. So, as a medical researcher and a trained physician, obviously, you understood that the commercial medical side of things were like, our solution is the CPAP machine, or, and you write about this in your book, we can do a surgical procedure, or we can do pretty much invasive programs. And we're not into the holistic approach because that's just not our style. So it sounds to me like you are like, I'm not following your lead, guys. I'm going to look at this from a historical position. And as you're saying, and you write about this in your book, that in the 50s and 70s, they began looking at this. Do we know if it goes back further than that? Is this an industrial complex, a modern society problem? Not enough thought for, and we'll talk about nutrition and exercise in a minute, but just part of a sedentary lifestyle?
It partially is. I think a lot of the, I guess, modernization of things and now how humans have begin to devolve is a huge part of it. Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, like, a lot of these things, like, because I wasn't so contrarian until I was like in it, which I think is a very common pattern with like modern medicine. Like, it's good to think on, but then you feel the opposite when you're in it. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense on paper, and then you're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Same thing there. So that can be one contributing factor for sure, because yes, nutrition, yes, different nutrients you have will come together because the big link between those factors, right? Your environment, your lifestyle, how sedentary you are. With breathing, the biggest one is going to be through your mitochondria. All right, that's what produces energy. And if anyone's like powerhouse of the cell, awesome. Is that that's what produces CO2. So just like your car produces exhaust and burning energy, your mitochondria produce CO2 by also burning energy in the form of fuel, not diesel or premium, although I think some people are trying to eat that nowadays. But beyond
Mhm.
that, CO2 will then tell your brain, hey, this is how we should breathe. So when CO2 is high or metabolic activity is high, it makes sense. We should breathe more. When it's
Right.
low, we don't need to breathe as much. Now, one of the biggest things with sleep apnea is this thing called respiratory loop gain. Very catchy, sound very cool. If you say it, no doctor will know where we're talking. I mean, a pulmonologist would. But if you're seeing a pulmonologist, you're probably in the ICU or something. And that's your brain's response to CO2 levels. And think of it like a breathing thermostat, where if there's a certain amount of CO2, there's a certain response for you to breathe a certain way. When someone has sleep apnea, it's the very oversensitive thermostat. The moment the temperature goes like up, AC kicks on like instantly, even when it's not needed. So this happens because a lot of times when like you have the faster breathing pattern and then you have an obstruction and then immediately after the obstruction you'll start to breathe fast again and start to sort of wire this pathway of being very
Uh,
over responsive to
okay.
things.
Yeah.
So then if we layer in these lifestyle things, I'm coming back around to the original point. This was a detour. Is that like say if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates or something like that, like live in the carbo loca here, that is going to impact, that sounds like a bad restaurant somewhere, but that's going to impact how much CO2 is going to be produced, and then that's going to impact your breathing thermostat. Let's say you're sitting around all the time,
Hmm.
right? You're super sedentary. That's very similar. If you have a car that you like never drive, and then like 3 years later, you're like, let me take the Chevy Impala out for a spin because why not? The engine's going to kick out more, so to speak. So it's going to alter I think I froze for a little bit there, but the engine's going to, spew out some crud here, and that's going to alter how much CO2 is going to be made. Then your breathing thermostat can't properly adjust to it. Bad breathing pattern, more apnea episodes. That's why a lot of times when you see these lifestyle interventions, which is funny because a lot of times in social media, maybe you've seen it, I make this incredibly controversial position of maybe lifestyle factors affect your breathing and sleep, which I know is, it's up there with Galileo saying, I think the Earth goes around the sun, maybe not the other way. I know
Yeah.
very, you know, difficult positions to defend across modern human thought. Point being, if I say like lifestyle impacts sleep apnea, people will be like, oh, but like I thought it was an obstruction. There's something in the way and this and that. But those same people won't think twice if I say, well, if you drink alcohol
Yeah.
before bed, or if you eat a really heavy meal a couple hours before bed, or one very, very common event, like people when they stay up a little bit later, they go to bed 2 hours later. Oh, I had way more snoring.
Yeah.
We've made no changes to your anatomy.
Yeah.
And yet, we've changed something where someone's in a different environment. They're breathing in crap. They're stressed out more.
Right.
All of that's going to impact how you breathe and thus how many apnea episodes you have at night.
So before we get into more specifics, because what I want to do is I want to get into the AMA's look at it, the industry of CPAP and so forth. But before we do any of that, what is the basis? What is the definition of sleep apnea? Obviously, it's obstructed breathing, but it's it's the throat closing down on the windpipe, basically, right?
Yeah, so an apnea episode is a stoppage in airflow that also happens at the same time you have oxygen levels drop a certain amount for a certain amount of time. That's all an apnea episode is. Sleep apnea is then when that happens anywhere, well, it has to happen at least five or more times per hour over the course of a night. So like if you sleep 8 hours, 5 times 8, if anyone has a mathematical PhD, you can figure that one out, about 40 events per night. That's all it takes
Right.
to then have a sleep apnea diagnosis. And then, it breaks down to different categories, but that's where it starts.
Yeah, I had a heart episode in 2022. When I went into the doctor, they put a stent in my coronary artery. But the other thing he said, have you been tested for sleep apnea? And this is the training. And of course, I did get tested. It came back with moderate sleep apnea. They immediately recommended the CPAP machine, which stands for continuous positive airway pressure. And in my case, my insurance covered it, but it was still $1,000 machine, which is not cheap. And I did it twice and I couldn't stand it.
Yeah, that's very typical. I mean,
Yeah, talk about that because those machines that's the standard recommendation is these damn machines.
yeah, yeah. So the research has shown if you're Dr. Joe and you're a sleep specialist, you have 100 patients and you give them all CPAP within 1 year, within 12 months, which may range from day two to day 100, like 365, about 40% of them will still be on it. So you lose a lot of people right away. And then of those 40%, about half of them will say they experience benefit from it at all. So it's one of those things where there will be people who they love it and that's great. They name it. I'm not saying, no one should stop their CPAP if they love it and they're responding well to it. Awesome. But at the same time, we shouldn't sacrifice the silent, perhaps even gaslit majority for the minority experience and also expert opinion, right? Because it's one of those things
Yeah.
where, you know, most sleep medicine doctors are probably not on a CPAP, and it makes sense for them to be like, yeah, use this thing. But if like, any sort of treatment's like, oh yeah, so you're gonna put this on your face and hope you're not claustrophobic. And, if it
Exactly.
stays on
Yeah.
and if it doesn't come off in the middle of the night, and also if it doesn't like dry your face out, and if you don't react to it, and if you aren't using the Philips ones that gives you like lung cancer, if all that happens, might be okay.
Yeah. But it's a nefarious industry. I in your book you talk about Phillips division sued for $1.1 billion recently because of people having all kinds of health issues that use this CPAP machine. And but then again, if we look at it from a historical point of view, in the 50s up to the 70s, the solution was a tracheometry, tracheometry, you know, which is
It
a
is a step up. You give him credit.
but it's also it's so invasive. It's like this is the model of allopathy is they forget about the holistic aspect and they get into the commercial machine. They spend billions on making these machines that you're telling us that only 40% of people use them after they begin. And then there's all kinds of crazy medical procedures. There's one that you write about that I've been seeing. It's called Inspire Therapy, where they shock the system into breathing again. And this is something that looks really cool because they show it on TV. They don't show the surgical procedure. They don't show the tune-ups and the adjustments to this procedure.
Oh, they
It's
have great advertising. It's
it,
good stuff. It's
it's
great.
horrible, horribly invasive. So this is what we're faced with, and this is why you're on the program, Dylan, is the fact that they don't go to the source, which is a holistic approach, and look at nutrition, look at exercise, look at lifestyle as a causation. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of speaking over you a little bit, but I'm just want our listeners to get a sense of why it's important to go to the source, go back to the beginning, and see where you are nutritionally, where you are stress wise, where you are on a more naturalistic or holistic balance scale as a starting point when you are when it's determined that you are a candidate for sleep apnea. So, can we go back a little bit and let's talk about the CPAP machine and the problems associated with it, most notably the the the, the problems with the body that people
Yeah,
have.
definitely the biggest problem. You can't get a custom color on the outside. A lot of people says that's not a problem, but the
Jesus
just not
Christ.
just they just don't have personalized medicine like they should nowadays. Maybe you want a green one. But let's just go through the whole thing. So, yeah, so let's start with the Philips thing. So, a CPAP has like a lot of parts, like there's filters and all these things. And, they're going to be using a lot of polymers to create that. And I know a lot of people are more familiar with microplastics. What I'm about to discuss is not microplastics per se, but just the idea of if I have like if this is a plastic bottle, this is a green bottle and it's not a Heineken, it's Mountain Valley Spring, everyone. But if you are interacting with this plastic thing all the time, you're going to get some of that plastic in you. I
Right.
hope people are starting to understand that now. Now, let's say you have continuous air force from the pressure from the CPAP, and then you have these actual like foam particles now coming out of it in some of these defective machines. This is what the lawsuit was about. And then all these people, you know, get lung cancer and all these things that go downhill. That's what's known. And if anyone's a historian of pharmaceutical, tobacco, those are kind of the main two. The scheme is let's make a bunch of money, get ahead, and then these lawsuits will happen and they'll it'll pan out in terms of revenue and then revenue loss from the lawsuits. But with other things around CPAPs to consider, one, I do think microplastics are going to be an issue with those over time. It just kind of makes sense to me. Number two is also mold exposure because a lot of people, whether they're not taught or told, they use this thing or it's stored improperly, they don't change out the filter, that will start to become a hotbed of all sorts of interesting things that you're then breathing in
Right.
for, 2 to 8 hours. Airway inflammation, and it's like more upper airway, like in your mouth, etc. Because again, if you're just constantly having air there, that's going to create friction. And then what else can we go through this? Let's even go electromagnetic, because a lot of these things, what has a heating coil, it's going to put an electric field on your face. A lot of these are hooked up to Wi-Fi for some godly reason. I'm not sure why you want that. That's going to radiate you. It's just this whole laundry list of things. Again, there's someone who might experience a lot of benefit from it, but when something's not amazing, we need to ask ourselves like why this is and what the risk and benefits are and like why there's other things that are better. Because kind of to your point of where a very common path is go to doctor, CPAP. All right, you're in the algorithm. You're moving on a square now. You get a CPAP. Oh, that didn't work. Have we tried lecturing the patient? Okay, let's do that. And then maybe let's try different math. Let's maybe try BiPAP. Let's try some surgeries out. And then, well, I mean, not try per se, but people might get like their uvula taken out. That's a little thing hanging down in the back. Maybe they get
Huh.
some rotoscoping down their nose. Maybe you mentioned the Inspire, which is think of it like a pacemaker for your tongue in a way.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it sound any more pleasant, but it's a device that shocks your tongue such that it stays more tone and out of your airway. That's like the simplest explanation of it.
Does it actually work though, this Inspire method? Because I can't find any documentation. I haven't really looked that deep though, but they're saying it's the new miracle procedure, but it's a surgical procedure. And what you write about is that just because they do it once doesn't mean it's going to work. They have to kind of tune it up or adjust it, you know.
Yeah, so modern medicine is a cure with the story of like 10 ifs behind it, right? Like we're gonna put this in and if it's in the right position and if the wire went through your neck properly and if you're not reacting to the surgical sites and if it settles correctly and if we find the right because like it's not just on off, it's more like think of it like a volume remote. You got to have different settings of different electrical current going
Oh,
through it.
yeah.
If we find the right level for you. And if your body, because sometimes people like they get to an 8 out of 10, super arbitrary scale, it's not what it is. They get to an 8 out of 10 on the shock scale, then like maybe it stops working and like maybe they go up, maybe they have to go down for a little bit and then back. Like there's this whole adjustment period. And then if again it's staying fine, etc. And heaven forbid if you ever need an MRI or something, okay, like there's a lot. Now again, there's some people who it works for and rave about it, but again, it just has so many. Like if we compare it to like some of the things I mentioned, just the opposite, like eat earlier at dinner, raise the head of your bed, do some breathing exercises. I haven't gotten an email yet in many, many years of like, oh man, I did these breathing exercises and like I can't see anymore. I can't.
I'm blind.
Yeah. Well, I guess that person wouldn't be emailing me. They would struggle to find the keyboard. So maybe I should have a better example. But
No, you're trained as an allopath, and so I can hear it in your voice that you're kind of disgusted at your brethren, and the medical experimentation that is FDA approved. I don't know how Inspire therapy can be improved, but obviously they pushed it through and paid tens of millions of dollars to
it's an old
somebody.
technology. It's an old technology. Like FDA approval for it's so if you want to think like the FDA, I would first encourage you to stop thinking. That's like step one. And step two is one of the biggest things that allows them to move something forward is if it is similar to something that has existed in the past. So Inspire is just a type of a hypoglossal nerve stimulator. So there's been different iterations of this over like decades.
Oh, really? So this is not
Yeah, so
new.
that's why like approving slight variations of it or large variations, it is pretty easy. Whereas like if I wanted to make a device, I don't know, if I wanted to make a device out of this bottle that helped you breathe better, and all you had to do was like blow in it for 5 minutes,
Yeah. Okay.
couple million, maybe 2 to 4 years later.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary what these doctors are doing to people. As I mentioned, I didn't find any use for CPAP machine. But before we get into the solutions that you offer in your book, which are very holistic, talk about mouth guards because I tried using the mouth guard. One of the mouth guards I use sucks your tongue out to the front of your mouth, and I was miserable because I kept freaking out. I put it in and I wake up in an hour later thinking, what's going on? But do those actually work?
Was it a
Those
tongue suction device or like a
Yeah,
true mouth guard, tongue suction? Okay.
yeah.
So it can work. Like, because there's all these things, right? There's tongue suction, there's like a straw you suck on, there's all sorts of different things. If that is like your one and primary issue, and again, it's the only issue, yeah, it can work. Now, a big if to it though, because when like you're pulling your tongue forward, not the most comfortable thing. And with sleep apnea, if I do like a little side profile here, one of the big problems is the tongue is down and back here.
Right.
And it's used to sitting here a lot. So if you try to pull it forward, it can be a very uncomfortable stretch. And some people, I mean, it just doesn't really jive with
It
them.
hurt a
But
lot.
again, if you're able and if that's like the strict only problem, then yeah. But like flip like on the converse, let's say the tongue's not the problem. It's really like the positioning of your jaw, and then you still have the bad breathing pattern, then it's not going to be your sort of go-to thing.
Interesting. Before we jump into your solutions, I want you to address some of the what you call hidden nutritional demands of sleep and also hormones for sleep recovery. So, one of the things about sleep apnea that you discuss and sleep in general is that when you don't get a good sleep, it deprives the body of nutrients. Talk about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So just like when if a car analogy, I mean like if you yeah, let's go with car analogy. I'm not a car guy though. So God help us all with this one. So you have like an issue with your brake pad, right? So you're gonna now rely on your emergency brake. Okay, this is shaping up to be a good one. When you do that all the time, like if you use your emergency brake to stop all the time, your car is gonna wear and tear differently, right? Especially around the emergency brake, and then one day you're gonna be driving and have no brakes available to you.
Right.
With our body, if you're not sleeping well or you don't sleep well that night, the next day your body's going to be in a different metabolic state. So here's, say you have good sleep metabolism and you have bad sleep metabolism. Okay. Bad sleep metabolism needs to act a different way to make up for like your brain being sluggish, your cells being tired, etc. And good state metabolism doesn't need to do that. So when you're constantly in bad state metabolism, your body is hoping and also strategized and thinking, this is just a short-term problem. Let's just get through today, kind of drive around with the emergency brake. Problem becomes when you do that all the time, you're in that bad state metabolism, bad sleep, and there's going to be certain nutrients that will be selectively depleted. So one such is that when you're in bad sleep metabolism, you will burn sugar preferentially to fat. All right. As a result, you will use more of those enzymes. One of the most prominent ones is thiamine or vitamin B1, and then you'll use that up, and that's not good for a lot of reasons. Number one, that's also a vitamin that is essential for a certain part of your brain called the mammillary bodies. We're not producing milk here. That is connected to your breathing centers. So if we're low in thiamine, which is a prevalent nutrient in an area of your brain that controls breathing, gonna make things worse. So that's like probably one of the top ones there. There's a whole lot of them. So another one being magnesium, because again, when your carbohydrate metabolism, you will also deplete magnesium. Another one being copper is a big one because of
Really?
just all the different properties. And before we go much deeper on that, not people shouldn't like go put pennies in their socks because of this, but the or take a bunch of it, be careful, is that when we think about sleep, there's different things like the production of melatonin, different enzymes like superoxide dismutase, all these different things, they rely on copper. And again, if we're sleeping poorly, we're inefficient, that's going to be overused, etc. And also, copper is used very often as an antioxidant inside of your cells. If you're not sleeping well, you're having damage tonight, you're going to have more inflammation, and then that's going to cause a lot of issues and then
Mhm.
use up that nutrient there. Also, like certain fatty acids will be depleted, right? Whether it's like choline, phosphatidylserine. I mean, these are lipids, I guess,
Mhm.
but those would be things that just start to go downhill. And this is also why, let's say someone uses a CPAP, a tongue suction, whatever, just breathing, okay, it is a necessary part of good sleep, but it is not sufficient, right? Like for if you want to make s'mores, wood is necessary, but you are not going to make ooey gooey s'mores just if you have a pile of pine in the background, okay, and in the in the backyard. You need all the other ingredients. So that's why when people like they're breathing better or whatever, or they're using one of these treatments and feel better, but they're still like there's something missing. And that's because they were depleted of these nutrients that are not just going to magically come back because you're
Yeah.
breathing better.
I think one of the problems with modern society is people don't have a sense of their bodies, and they'll go to a physician and hoping the physician will be able to figure out what's going on. And the solution, the bag of solutions for allopathic medicine is unfortunately very small. It's pharmaceutical drugs, it's surgical procedures, and of course, if you have a cancer of some kind, they can address it with radiation, which isn't a solution at all. And I think what you're offering is for people to begin coming back home and going, what's your body talking to you about? How are you feeling? How are you functioning? And this is where these remedies are coming through. I think one of the last things I want to mention before we get into your solutions is the fact that CPAP's a serious thing. And I think you're right that it depletes up to 10 or more years of your life. You
Hmm.
lose, years by dealing with this from a non-holistic point of view. Talk just briefly about
Yeah,
the
so with sleep
lifeline.
apnea, yeah, it's going to reduce life expectancy by about 8 to 10 years,
Yeah,
and quality of like so there's lifespan and health span, right? Lifespan, how long are you alive? All right. Modern medicine's kind of helping out with that, but then if your last like 20 years are in a nursing home, do you really care if you added 20 years to your life, right? So health span is how healthy are you in those years. Sleep apnea will take about like 20 years off of the health span. So what that means is basically if you're 60, you're gonna feel like you're 80, right?
yeah,
And obviously that's not what we want. And this happens because, well, mortality wise, zooming out, sleep apnea is a double-edged sword in that your body is damaging itself at night, and then also you have no ability to repair at night. It
right.
would be, if we had one, okay, but you have both. And that's how
Which,
things,
which is what you're saying is when you're sleeping, the body's repairing itself.
yes, well, should be, but if you're gasping for air every 20 seconds, it will not be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then all the systems will start to fall apart. That's why like pretty much every single major disease goes up by like two, threefold in sleep apnea. Whether it's strokes, heart attacks, those are the big ones.
Right.
Diabetes goes up, cancer goes up. I mean, I know car accidents are not a disease, but they still have the same endpoint. Those skyrocket, just, really everything just goes dementia way up. Those are all the major things from that.
Okay. In chapter 4, you get into breathing. Talk about the sleep method. This is one of your babies here, one of your
Great
designs.
acronym. Great acronym here. So SLEEP stands for slow breathing is the S there. And then am I really gonna forget my own acronym? I always wondered how artists forget their own lyrics, and now I'm at this juncture here. So it's lower stress, establish good circadian rhythm, and then environment is the fourth letter, and then P is prioritize nutrition. All right. So
Right. With nutrition, right.
yes. So got quizzed on my own book. I think I passed. Don't check out chapter. I haven't studied beyond chapter 4, so don't.
Yeah.
But so when looking at that, I know it's 5 letters. The first one is the most important. Slow breathing. Okay. And then the other things are like if you lump them all together, equally important. Now, that being said, some people may have a lot of room for improvement in one, like environmental. You have like a moldy pillow. Okay, I don't care if you're doing all the fun breathing exercise during the day. If you're breathing in like mold for 8 hours, might be a problem. So the first one, slow breathing. So the basic premise of all of this is that for sleep apnea, that is, fast, irregular breathing will trigger airway collapse. Even like, and this holds true if you have like nasal polyps, big tongue, big uvula, you have a narrow trachea for some reason. Those are just like things that increase the risk of this being triggered, but also that like anatomical basis, this is why you functionally develop the fast breathing pattern in the first place. Because instead of having a bigger airway, you have a smaller airway. And if you've ever, for fun, walked around your day breathing through a straw, one, it's not fun. Two, because it's a more, a smaller hole, you have to breathe faster just to keep up. So when you do that, when you have a narrow airway, you're going to have a faster breathing pattern by default, and then it'll just kind of cascade and gain this sort of momentum. So if the problem is fast, the solution is slow.
Right.
Mind blowing. And a lot of these drills revolve around that. So slow breathing in its core is just like, I mean, we can go over a few exercises here. Like, let's say you inhale for like 4 and then exhale for 8. Okay. So usually having sort of like a ratio of a longer exhale to an inhale.
What's four and
This
eight mean? Four
four
inhale,
count, four
four
counts.
counts.
Like, yeah.
Oh, like hold the
So,
breath, you mean?
no, like inhale, take like 4 seconds to inhale and then take 8 seconds to exhale.
Okay.
Nice and slow.
Okay.
All right. So let's say we do that. That would take us about, oh, I kind of want to be even. So let's say we do 5 in, 10 out. We now have a breathing rate of 4 breaths per minute. All right. And if someone can't figure out how we got there, don't worry. There will be a book on that calculation coming out next year. I'm joking. It's just 15 seconds times 4. So we're not on the 4 breaths per minute. Usually, just walking around the day, someone's at like 12 or 16 seconds. Sorry, 12 or 16 breaths per minute. So the idea is you do some drills and you bring your breathing rate to slow because you kind of live kind of fast if we're back in our thermostat analogy. But we bring ourselves to slow so that when you go about your day and recalibrate, you're kind of going a little bit slower, just a little bit, right? You're not going to like stop breathing. And in doing so, that starts to rewire how your brain and your body works together to calm down your breathing thermostat to then allow things to be slower at night. 'Cause that's the big thing. People will ask like, well, okay, cool, I did 10 minutes of box breathing or something else, but I don't control how I sleep at night. And the good news is you don't control how you sleep ever. Your brain
So are you
does.
saying by doing this practice that the body naturally will conform to that rhythm
Yes.
because it's more comfortable or because it the body understands that what you're trying to do is bring it back to homeostasis or something?
You're retraining it. So by breathing slower, there's a lot of different things, but the main thing is that your CO2 levels are going up in your body. Okay.
Okay.
That's not a bad thing. It's a natural thing that happens. When CO2 goes up and you're not breathing in response to that, you're making your thermostat less sensitive. All the way ago, we said the big problem is your breathing thermostat's way too sensitive. It sees a little bit of CO2 and then it freaks out, makes you breathe.
Hmm.
But when you do these exercises, CO2 goes up, your breathing thermostat's like, oh, there's CO2. And consciously, you're preventing yourself from breathing. Well, you're breathing slower. So then your breathing thermostat is okay with higher amounts of CO2.
Okay.
And then as a result, you will breathe slower. Like your breathing center does not freak out every single time it sees a molecule of CO2. It feels more safety around that.
Hmm.
So then at night, you follow that pattern or you're close to it.
Okay. Cool. So how much is the sleep, or excuse me, the breathing exercises a critical and the other aspects too? Is it all the less stress, the enhanced environment, nutrition, and the breathing exercises? Is that what's needed for the change, or is the breathing the most important?
I would say the breathing is going to bring the majority of the results. So if I had to make a Venn diagram, or no, I wouldn't have a Venn diagram, a pie chart, I would say breathing is 40% of the results. Strengthening your airway muscles is probably another maybe 20 or 30%. And then the lifestyle factors are the remaining amount.
Okay. So this is the big problem, and you write about this, is that people typically eat too much processed food. They don't exercise enough. They are in environments that are completely stress related, and these all contribute to sleep apnea. So, and I know you have case study. In a minute, I'm going to ask you for a Oh, should I ask you for some case studies? Betty, Tim, John, and so on. That's probably not going to be great. Maybe off the top of your head, you can provide a suggestion of somebody who came in with moderate to severe sleep apnea and went through the Petkiss system of breathing.
The super duper Petkiss powerful breathing regimen. Trademark pending. No one steal that name. I know it's really catchy. So, like, for like examples of lifestyle change people have used, is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, because obviously you've been doing this for at least what, a couple of years, and
Huh?
your book's filled with examples of people who actually follow the programs and got relief. So, do you have anybody you can refer to who perhaps had moderate to severe sleep apnea and got relief?
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if you were asking about like someone who changed their diet. So yeah, we have a lot of people. So one guy, we'll call him T, I guess. The just go with initials. So he was on the younger side. I think he was at moderate or severe. I don't remember his exact AHI. And yes, the breathing was a big problem, but his environment was a super duper big problem, like really bad mold. So
Really?
not only working on the environmental side, being less exposed to it, but then also when you breathe in mold a long time, it will colonize your airway, which is exactly as pleasant as it sounds. So using certain things like it's like an herbal nasal spray. It's like getting punched in the face by oregano. But yeah, it's spicy. But that will start to break up some like the biofilms, etc., so that you can breathe through your nose because nasal breathing is of paramount importance for sleep apnea. And then also his body circadian rhythm was like really off. So he was like, up super early, waking up all the time at night. So being able to get his like rhythm into a good place, like making sure like he's getting out in the sun and like getting that like, sort of signal to his body and then making sure his sleep hygiene, like dark curtains, all of that was in place so he could be in a much, much better spot around that there.
Now, are
So,
you recommending this, Dylan? Are you the one that's hearing from this individual and you're saying, okay, let's do an analysis of your sleep patterns and what you do to prepare for bed kind of thing?
so when someone's sharing like, hey, this is like my night routine, it doesn't, well, it doesn't take me long, which I guess is kind of the point of being like, oh, hey, like these are kind of the 3 points of optimization around like your behaviors from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. when you're trying to get to sleep here. And then we just like optimize those components. So like, what are you doing at night? Like your night routine. Okay, you have, I don't think anyone's had a night light. I don't think anyone would get that far to me. But like they get up in the middle of the night and then they decide to like read with like all the lights on in their living room. Like, what are we doing here? Sort of like things like that.
Right.
Or maybe like the diet they're eating is just like super carb heavy, like very low protein, etc. So their body's like in that really bad, kind of in that bad metabolism state, right? Like they're just
Hmm.
feeding it more and more carbs and depleting more and more of the nutrients. So we want to be able to have them focus on those components to restore the whole picture there.
Interesting. You mentioned the circadian rhythm. Talk about that because that's an important aspect of wellness that I wasn't really familiar with. And it seems to me when mankind was more earth-centered, when we were out in the nature more and sleeping out under the stars and so forth and so on, we were much healthier. But talk about the circadian rhythm. What is it?
Yeah, so circadian rhythm is when your body does what in the simplest essence. And the extension of that is when your body does what when it's appropriate to do so. That's like the biggest thing. So like we live our lives and it's like I'm in here with like these lights, you know, and then like I don't know, it could be 2 a.m. for all anyone knows. For me, maybe I live in I don't know where the heck it'd be 2 a.m. Alaska or something.
The
I don't know.
cave.
Singapore. And that's how people go about their life, right? It's like it's 9 p.m. You're sitting watching TV and you have this light that's hitting your retina and saying, I know it's 9 p.m., but it's actually, based on this light, it's really 1 p.m. And then we wonder, well, why am I not tired? Oh, no, sort of thing. So it's just being able to make sure that you don't have things disrupting your body circadian rhythm. So like light at the wrong time is like one of the top culprits. Having too much blue light well, I mean, really, any sort of artificial light at night is going to then disrupt your rhythm. Or maybe you're just like in sheer darkness all day. Like if I sit in my office all day, it's not very bright in comparison to outside. So lux is the intensity of brightness perceived by the object. In an office, maybe it's around 500 lux, maybe. In like a bright, annoying office, it's like maybe 700. You step outside on a cloudy day, it's going to be at least 10,000 lux. Like you're outside Canada. Let's say you're in Canada, cloudy day. Because people in Canada are like, oh, there's no sun here. I'm like, well, there's about, 1,000 times more light outside than inside, no matter how cloudy it is. But as
Mhm.
humans, if we just are inside in offices all day, we miss out on that huge signal. And the darkness prevents us, relative darkness, prevents us from having a good, healthy circadian rhythm there. So it's kind of the two pieces, the things that disrupt it, and then also not having a signal like being outside in the sun to tell your eye, to tell your brain, like, hey, it's this time of the day, let's do these things.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you spent time on being physically in natural sunlight. You actually say that people should go out in the morning and kind of bathe for a few minutes in the natural sunlight, which keeps this circadian rhythm flowing. It's kind of a enhancement of some kind, a natural enhancement that we perhaps were used to in an earlier version of humanity. And then the other thing, and you just mentioned it, is reduce light at nighttime. I guess you're right. If we're bathed in artificial light, it's kind of a stimulant, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah. I mean, that's exactly why it is made. So like a lot of these environmental things, like office work, warehouse work, if you look at like, oh geez, I forget when this research is, but the basic premise is how can we maximize productivity in our workers without like killing them today? It's kind of the whole basic premise. So there's like certain temperatures of light, like color temperature, not hot to the touch, but like
Right.
how they're how blue they are, if you will. And there's a certain level that if you do that, that'll maximize productivity. And then if you layer in then this like craze of over craze of like environmental efficiency, you have to have LED lights or you're a bad person, then that becomes another like non-human alien sort of like source of light that is then going to not interact well with human biology.
Right. You have a chapter on the environment, which I thought was interesting. And you mentioned a couple of things like electromagnetic frequency, which is like being around machines that are pumping out electricity. If your room's full of devices and stuff like that, that's not a good thing. Talk about that for a minute. Well, why would that be a problem? Is it the electrical current?
Yeah, so let's do EMFs 100 seconds flat. So electromagnetic field, or also known as electromagnetic radiations, anytime you have an electron that accelerates, which I know we're all like in, steady state versus acceleration in increasing velocities, it will produce a wave of energy in the series of photons in different frequencies, right? So if I had a phone nearby, I don't know where it is. I guess that's my next thing to do, find my phone. It will be around, like there's different bandwidths, like 900 megahertz, 1800 megahertz, even 2.4 gigahertz. Microwave is about 2.4 gigahertz. That's what that is. So those electrons are making things that jiggle very fast across space and time. Our body relies on charged particles to move around in a very precise manner, like like figure skaters, like Disney figure skater, like Lilo and Stitch on ice times 10 billion is what's going on inside of our cells. And if you have an electromagnetic field or radiation, whether it's from the computer screen, whether it's from my microphone, whether it's from the CPU on my computer here going around like, a billion times a second, that is going to make my electrically charged positive or negative particles jiggle. All right. That's going to make it very harder for biology to do its job. Okay. It's not going to be a very good Lilo, is it Lilo or I don't forget what it is, but like, it's not going to be a great show. Practically how that pans out. So I was talking about like a CPAP. It could also be like the number one culprit is like people have their cell phone and then they charge it on their nightstand, and then you have this big electric field from the electricity coming from the wall socket to the phone, and then you have your phone on, right? It's still transmitting signals, whether it's to a cell phone tower, whether it's to your Wi-Fi, and it's doing that a whole lot. And your apps are updating all the time. They're always pinging back and forth. That is going to then disrupt how your body does things. That's why the research has shown, like you have these things, etc. It's going to lower, like for instance, lower your production of melatonin, your sleep hormone. Not exactly what we want if we want to have better sleep here.
Right.
And it's super easy to mitigate too, because like 80 to 90% of our exposure are things like I just mentioned, of where like instead of charging your cell phone on your nightstand, maybe charge it in your bathroom, 11.7 feet away. And that will like dramatically reduce the exposure because it follows like the inverse square law here. Where's my hand here? Basically, the closer you are, exponentially gets worse. But the further it gets away, exponentially, you're less exposed. So, there's little things, there's big things too around reducing EMS, but those are very often overlooked, especially when people have like they have a CPAP and they wear an Aura ring on each hand, and then they have another tracker, and then
And
they
their
have like
phones in
Alexa and
their head.
Siri and whatever else, and then they're like they have their router underneath their bed or in their bedroom closet.
That's horrible. That's too much Wi-Fi. Yeah, electromagnetic.
You'd be surprised. I mean, honestly, I would say like if someone like sometimes like we go over the environment with people, I mean, it's got to be like probably 60 or 70% of people who are sleeping really poorly, like have the router obnoxiously too close to where they sleep.
Wow, amazing.
So
Well, hey, it sounds to me like you're asking people who have sleep apnea to look at their not only their environment but also their lifestyle. And this is a critical issue, is what you're showing us here. The modern society that we live with all these unseen frequencies and Wi-Fi and not getting out enough, not exercising, eating poorly. It's the modern society. Is this is a modern disease, if you want to call it a disease. And you're asking people to look at their lifestyles and adjust. And when we do that, how effective are we getting to eliminating or reducing sleep apnea, Dylan?
super duper effective is the clinical term. So it all depends on are we doing the right things and are we being consistent with, because there may be 1,000 things to do. There will probably be like, I don't know, 22 things out of that that's going to really work for you versus Debbie versus Joey versus like so on and so forth here. And someone just has to go through it in layers because when we focus on the breathing, that's going to give you a large portion of the result. And for some people, that may be like all they need. Like we have our program and I forget when it is, but like I sent an automated email out like 7 days in, like, how you doing? And a lot of times people are like, oh my God, it's like a whole new world here. And that's all they needed. Okay. Some people are like, I'm a little bit better. Like, okay, cool. And there might be more layers of the onion to go through here,
Mhm.
so to speak. So it's going to really vary person to person, but that's kind of the beauty of lifestyle because let's say I'm twisting your arm to do some 20 minutes of slow breathing exercises and maybe eat some more protein and all this stuff. Maybe I annoy you. Maybe I take up a little time every day, but it's a little bit better than having like, I don't know, part of your throat irreversibly sliced out and be like, well, that didn't work after 3 months of recovery and be like, well, maybe we'll do something else. Like it's a lot more modifiable. Yes, it's going to require more input, but like that's kind of the point to like have a healthy life. It's not just like people shouldn't live like Warren Buffett where you just like drink Coke and eat McDonald's or whatever, and then when something goes wrong, you pay like $1.5 million to your surgical team to take care of something.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's 94, but I forget, but that's just not going to work for most people. It's the little things you do and you're consistent with. And like you said, just like listening to like, okay, this breathing worked well, this tongue exercise worked well. Or maybe they didn't. You need to change how you're doing or, address other things. Like there's been people who, like I have some like, videos on like thiamine or things like that. Like they just add it. And again, I'm not recommending this to an individual, but I'm just saying this person was like, yeah, I started taking it and my snoring went away. That won't happen for most people,
Yeah,
but it will for some because that was like one of their big missing things.
amazing. The book's called Sleep Apnea Solutions. My guest today has been Dr. Dylan Petkiss. You can get the book on Amazon, but talk about your program, what people can do to sign up, what the website is, and more
Yeah, you,
details.
you just go to a bathroom mirror, say Peckus, 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 and then it'll just appear on your phone. There'll be a QR code. No, no, no. So yeah, we have a program, apneareset.com. Really briefly, what it is, you get like a dynamic breathing protocol because like, we just went over like one breathing exercise, like the 5 in, 10 out.
Yeah.
But just like exercise, it should scale, all right? Because if you want to lift 300 pounds, you probably shouldn't start there, but you need to start somewhere and build your way up. So what we have as part of our program is like a little system in which like you start with these breathing exercises, the next week you build up to these, etc., just to make sure like you're on a good progress path. And then
Hmm.
we also want to make sure you're supported with that. So we have lots of ways because you'll have questions. So we have like group Q&A calls or group chat
Oh,
or
cool.
community
With
forum,
live
all these
people.
places. Yep. And then other sorts of things like I call them our holistic protocols to focus on different aspects like, okay, my breathing's better. How can I improve my deep sleep? Or, how can I optimize my nutrition? Just like these little, they're like these 28-day stretches that you just complete. You just week by week, just go through a checklist, bada bing, bada boom. That's the New Jersey and me coming out. And that's how you do there. So that's something people can check out. Apnea resets
And so
dot
you have your own online, I'll just call it a clinic. There might be another name for it, where people can sign up, get
member
human
site.
beings
Yeah.
to analyze their lifestyle and then go from there.
Yes. Yes.
That's very cool. Fantastic. And as we can close, what's the success rate you're having with your? It sounds like a modern health issue. Unseen frequencies, poor diet, poor exercise, not enough sun, and so forth and so on. It's like it takes a lot to break down and have apnea, and how much time does it take to recover?
How involved am I and how involved is this person?
Okay, that's a good one. So the more you participate fully, heartfelt, the better your solution.
Yes, yes. So I track a lot of our statistics in like our little membership site. And this is also just across the board, like all these like little like health apps you see.
Yeah,
So the supposed standard and average rate, which I believe, if someone buys like a membership thing, it's like, 10, $20 a month, whatever. About 30% of people will use that throughout the month. 30%. 70% of people don't. They're like, all right, just forget about it. Which is, I feel that's very similar to like a physical gym, right?
yeah, exactly.
Can't speak for those people. And then the people who are then active, it's like, yeah, like how active are they? But let's say a scenario, it's like they're more active, they're raising their hand, etc., more involved with us. That's something where it can range from what would be typical? I would say 2 to 5 months would be a good range
That's
there.
actually very, very good.
There are people in the 1 month range. I don't want to count that or like be like, yeah, 4 weeks, this is gone. But a lot of people, they're in that time frame, and whether they're like, yeah, I sleep, like they're tracking their metrics, like they have like a tracker. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not sure what that became kind of like confrontational. They got a tracker on their hand or wrist, and they're seeing numbers that would indicate they're not having apnea episodes. They're falling in that clinical definition of sleep apnea, or they get a sleep test, and it's
Sleep
like, oh.
test. Yeah.
Like one lady, what'd she say? She was like, yeah, so my AHI was, I think, like 32 in June. It's October right now. In June, and I think she was in the program for like 2 or 3 months. And she's like, yeah, and I got retested. My AHI was 1, and my sleep doctor was like, yeah, I don't know, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, it's funny because I understand the allopathic model, and it's too bad there can't be a Petkiss Institute that people can go to that's funded by the FDA. you're not pushing enough machines and intervention and surgical procedures for you
I know, right?
to
I gotta.
qualify for the allopathic system, which is sad. It's a sad statement about allopathy. It's just so
I'm just a
commercial.
guy who makes a lot of videos telling people to breathe online. That's my business card.
Well, dude, it's fantastic. Sounds like you're doing a great job. And wow, it sounds like it's effective. So thank you for joining me, Dylan. It was really informative and more power to you, guy. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.